Welcome to Tossing Grenades at Windmills. Windmills.
Hi, my name is Matt Franklin. Tom's mic has died a horrible death, and he's asked me to take over for him for the podcast for a little while. We were introduced through our mutual friend, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. Chapter 6. Or, you need to get used to being the guy who does everything at a minute level, otherwise something will slip through the cracks. Jarvi thought about it. She was right. And he had been right to recruit her. He probably should have some willing compatriots to aid him in his cause. Snarks just didn't have everything he needed. But then again, how much could he really trust Laura? What he really needed was another kind of zombie, one with willpower and a brain. He needed officers in whatever kind of army he was going to create. The problem was, he didn't trust Chaos's magic. They would follow his commands as long as it followed Chaos's agenda. But what about once Chaos won his bet? Stupid Snarks were one thing. Intelligent zombies were something else. The thing that really worried Jarvi was the change the magic would make to their minds. If he made a smart zombie, then it wouldn't be a human being who was running around inside that corpse. It would almost assuredly have a mind as alien as that of Chaos, and that wouldn't do. So he had to have a way of corrupting and co-opting the human mind in such a way as to enslave it, but retain enough humanity so that it was something he could possibly understand. Thinking on the details? She asked with a smile. Something like that. Laura slid across the seat and traced his arm with her finger. Thinking evil geniuses put me in the mood to celebrate. Thought you weren't going to kiss me with hamburger in my mouth. Who said anything about kissing? Jarvi was nearly done with his experiments with the blood zombies. He knew at this point that they could be killed just like a normal human. It was just very hard to make them realize that. Only a point-blank shot to the head was going to be enough to keep them from utterly ignoring the pain or damage they had in terms of spreading the blood plague. They could go for 2 weeks without food or water, and they seemed to have limitless endurance within the scope of that time frame. They also had the IQ of a potato chip, slightly burned, but unlike the shells he created with the anima, they had no qualms about sunrise or sundown. They were 24-hour zombies. Still, they were mortal enough that he knew he was going to have to make more conventional undead zombies. These zombies would have to rise from the dead, and that meant spreading the seed as far and as wide as he could. At first, he'd considered some kind of satellite, until Laura had suggested a volcano. It was sheer genius in its simplicity. The Protonomicon contained quite a few unusual rituals, and when he mixed in a few human sacrifices combined with his anima powers, he could make a volcano erupt with sufficient strength to spread the disease to the 4 corners of the earth. The one problem was that he wasn't sure if he had to wait until just before the proper time to initiate his ritual. He worried that he might somehow violate the terms of the bet and lose his powers. He didn't know if Chaos would take them away, or if they would stop working on their own. And now that he had Laura, he had no intention of simply losing his powers. They were the key to his future happy life, even if that meant living at the expense of everyone else. He looked at the blood zombie that had been Cindy, the first redhead from the pens. For a while, he'd just used her as a snark to clean out all of the toilets, with her tongue. But after a while, her resemblance to Laura had made him uncomfortable. So he'd had one of the blood zombies bite her. He wanted to see if they were vulnerable to holy water or not. He sat in his lawn chair and watched as the Snarks led her out of her cage. She looked at the Snarks, of course, but the blood zombie was far more attracted to the living humans on the other end of the test area. As she ran towards them, 2 Snarks threw holy water balloons at her. Nothing happened. He was amused when she stopped in front of the humans at the last possible minute and turned around to look at him. He smiled. Fascinating. Every once in a while, one of the blood zombies showed some greater mental function, but even then they weren't much smarter than a 5th grader. Now she was running for him. He could use his anima to stop her or simply order her to stop. He was the god of zombies, but since there was a semblance of intelligence there, he waited until the last possible moment to torture her. And it would have been quite effective, too, except for the fact that she went around him and bit Laura instead. He was barely able to think straight as he whipped her back and into the air, while immediately yanking the chunk of bitten flesh from Laura's body. Laura screamed in surprise. Without a moment's hesitation, he initiated the transportation spell. He brought Laura with him. Though he was sure he had removed the infected flesh, he would take no chances. Chaos sat on a throne made of coffee mugs. Jarvi's eye caught small and large mugs from all over the world. Some were even from places like Atlantis, Shangri-La, and Camelot. Chaos sipped from one of the mugs. It was a warm, sour-smelling brew that wasn't coffee, but seemed like its demented cousin. He looked terrified.
"Jarvi! What is it, Jarvi?"
"This woman, Lara, has been infected."
"And?"
Jarvi thought it was obvious what he wanted, but Chaos wanted it said out loud, apparently. "I want her protected from the zombie strains I create with the seeds."
"Oh, it's about damn time."
"Sorry?"
"Your ignorance has worked against you, Jarvi. Even now your opponent marshals his forces. 3 boons as order given her champion, so in turn 3 boons I may give to you. The enema, the seeds, and now you want something else, yes?"
Jarvi nodded. In a flash, Chaos moved with impossible speed, blurring until he was inches from Jarvi's face. Chaos smiled politely.
"What, specifically, is the thing you want?"
Jarvi almost said that he wanted for Laura to be protected, but was that all? Even if he could order the zombies, then he might want a way to protect people from them. Such a mark would give him tremendous power over any living inhabitants who survived the plagues. He took a sharp breath. "I want a mark that I can grant to whomever I choose that will protect them from the curse of the seeds." Chaos frowned and shook his head.
"Good. It's about time. Any other questions?"
Jarvi was still nervous about asking too much, but he had to ask something or he would upset Chaos. "What are the boons granted to Grenademan?"
"An excellent question. You might only be as stupid as you look. 3 are the boons provided to Order's champion. Order chose them herself. Her rules are different than mine. Boots that leap like a rabbit, a pouch that can hold as much as it likes, and a talisman that ensures no strength of chaos may harm him. Remember that latter, Jarvi, because your anima is useless against him."
Jarvi nodded. "Thanks for the information." He thought a moment and bowed. "Thank you, O gracious master. I am eternally unworthy of you." Chaos waited several moments, but the only sound was the distant flickering of lightning and the swirl of clouds. He smiled and looked at Lara.
"Oh, and how are you doing?"
Lara waved. "Fine, thanks."
"Glad to hear it. Welcome to the team."
Suddenly there was a flash of light, and Jarvi found himself standing with Laura in the middle of the bay, just north of the warehouse. As they fell into water, he realized it was going to be a long swim. He probably should have asked Chaos more questions.
This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I'm Thomas Ricks. Music by Melanie Ricks. Voices by Skip Huffman and Josie Bergen-Lawson. Copyright 2012, Red Anvil Amalgamated.
To fight the forces of evil!